Walter, we thank you for your 17 years of dedication, but the company is undergoing restructuring. We are forced to terminate your contract effective today. The words echoed through the Monday morning meeting room, hitting my mind like the harsh clang of metal on concrete. Monica Avery, the chief financial officer, sat upright, hands resting on a neatly bound folder clipped with a stainless steel clasp. Next to her was Ryan Beckett, the 31-year-old MBA golden boy, nephew of the CEO, doing his best to appear professional in a brand new suit, eyes darting away, unable to meet mine. I, Walter Harris, 62 years old, head of IT infrastructure, just sat there. No shouting, no slamming fists. I just looked at them. Everything in my head paused for a few seconds, then passed with a strange calm. I nodded. I didn't ask, why? I didn't beg for another chance. I only asked one question. Do I have 30 minutes to pack, or an hour? No one answered. Monica tilted her head slightly toward the HR representative standing outside. I stood up, buttoned my coat, and walked out of the room as if I had just left a routine internal meeting. Maybe they thought I was too stunned to react. Maybe they thought I didn't understand what was happening. But they were wrong. I had seen this coming 3 months ago, when my system access began to be restricted without explanation, when Ryan was suddenly paired with me in strategy meetings I had never officially been invited to, when Monica began slashing the maintenance budget without consulting the technical team. They thought I was old, slow, in the way. They thought I would quietly disappear like an outdated printer being wheeled into storage. But they didn't realize that over the past 17 years, I hadn't just built the operational backbone of Crestview Logistics. I had built a system of my own, a network of memory, a structure of data, a collection of evidence I had never needed, until today. Back at my office, I opened the drawer, a rusty coat hanger, a family photo from Christmas 2008, and a ceramic mug that read, "Best Dad Ever," a Father's Day gift from my daughter. I placed everything neatly into a cardboard box. As I stood up, I caught the glances of a few coworkers, the ones I had saved during system crashes, the ones who called me at midnight when the database went down. They avoided eye contact, not because they hated me, because they were afraid they'd be next. Out in the hallway, Ryan looked at me from afar, saying nothing. I walked past him, shoulders square, not once looking back. No goodbyes, no handshakes, no thank yous. Just one thought echoed in my head as I stepped into the elevator. They think they just cleared out an old part. But in truth, they just tore out the core without knowing it. Tomorrow is Tuesday. But Wednesday will be interesting. I started at Crestview Logistics in the summer of 2006. Back then, the office had only 3 floors, computers still used floppy disks, and the inventory system ran on Excel installed on Windows XP. I wasn't hired for my degree, I didn't have one, but because I knew how to make things work without blowing up. They needed someone who understood that a system isn't just cables and software. It's people, time, and the gap between theory and real-world chaos. I was that person. In the 17 years that followed, I never took more than 3 days off. I once went to work with my leg in a brace after falling on an icy staircase. I once stayed in the server room until 2 a.m., just to monitor the server temperature after a spring storm knocked out the power grid. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying it because no one remembers anymore. I remember Christmas of 2010 when the storage system crashed right in the middle of processing orders for 3 major supermarket chains in the Midwest. The CEO back then, Mr. Thompson, called me at 4 a.m. I pulled a sweater over my pajamas, slipped on my boots, and drove through freezing sleet to the office. I sat there for 6 hours straight, restoring data from a ghost backup I had quietly configured 2 months earlier. When the system came back online, he said, "Walter, you didn't just save the system. You saved the company's reputation." In those years, I didn't just fix the system. I rebuilt it from scratch. From our first firewall setup to migrating the entire infrastructure to a hybrid cloud in 2018. I trained over 30 IT staff. I documented every configuration, every fine-tuned line of code, every piece of hardware that acted up seasonally. I knew when server number 4 would start humming louder than usual, and I could hear it even from 2 aisles away. In 2016, when the automated shipping line failed due to a faulty sensor, I manually rewired the control panel and stayed until 10 p.m. to ensure the Oklahoma order didn't get delayed. Not because anyone told me to, but because I felt responsible for the thing I had built. I remember the day my wife was hospitalized with a mild stroke. I asked to take a half day off to be with her, but by 1 p.m., sales called, "Walter, the quote system is spitting out corrupted formats. We don't know why." I told my wife, "I'll be gone for just an hour. I'll be right back." She held my hand and smiled. "You always come back, because you've never left anything unfinished." I fixed the bug in 45 minutes. I'm not a hero. I'm just an old guy who survived an era where things were built with dedication, not KPIs. I used to think that one day I'd step away. Maybe after finding someone worthy of inheriting what I'd built. Maybe when I could hand over the system, piece by piece, block by block, to the next generation. I thought I'd leave with a handshake, a cake, a thank you card. Instead, I got a termination letter with a pre-printed signature and the averted eyes of kids I once taught how to crimp network cables. I get it. Times change. People talk about agile transformation, zero trust infrastructure, cloud-native architecture. But who cleaned up after the Azure migration in 2019 failed because the product manager didn't understand API integration? Who rolled up their sleeves and rewrote the internal connector modules in 1 week, then worked overnight to run the stress tests? Me. In a logistics company, people only remember what's running well today. No one looks back at who kept it from collapsing for 17 years. But me? I look back, not out of bitterness, but to remember who I am. I didn't leave empty-handed. I took with me memories, the truth, and something they'll never measure in a monthly report, an understanding of the system down to its cellular level. And that, sooner or later, will become a very big problem for them. I wasn't pushed out of the company in a single day. They peeled me away layer by layer, bit by bit, like draining a tank quietly, slowly enough not to draw attention, steadily enough that by the time you noticed, it was already empty. It all began about 3 months before I was fired. One Tuesday morning, I logged into the system to check the automated backup schedule as usual. Normally, I had root access to every server, but that morning, one of the cloud clusters returned an access error. I assumed it was temporary and contacted access control. They told me, probably HR adjusting roles under new directives. You should check with Monica in finance. A casual response, but it made me stop. I'd never had my access restricted before, not even during internal audits. And this time, no one had given me a heads up. I tried a few other modules. Some were now locked, as if someone was reconfiguring the system and didn't want me to know. A few days later, I noticed a new user account in the project management system, username r.beckett. Not surprising, I knew Ryan, CEO's nephew, had recently been brought in under the title Strategic Technology Development, a role that sounded more like a formal excuse to seat him at the table. What caught my attention was this. Ryan's account had view and edit permissions for every file I'd configured over the years, even some files that were restricted to the IT core team. Access only I and 2 others ever had. The following week, I was invited to my first strategy meeting with Monica and Ryan. No agenda. Ryan stayed silent most of the time. Monica spent 80% of the meeting talking about resource optimization, eliminating technical waste, and pushing toward a fully paperless digital future. I spoke up. If we're going fully digital, we'll need a bigger hardware budget. We're still running on machines we bought during the Obama years. Monica smirked. Walter, this is the era of minimalism. Adding more doesn't always mean progress. Ryan raised his eyebrows and jotted something down, but I knew he didn't really grasp much of it. I said nothing further. Less than 2 weeks later, I discovered I had been removed from the internal IT mailing list, a group I had created myself. I asked the system's admin, why am I not getting emails anymore? He stammered, probably HR adjustments. They said the list is being streamlined. I looked at him. He avoided my gaze. I understood. He knew something was off, but he didn't dare say it out loud. Soon after, Monica announced that the entire invoicing system would be migrated to a third-party platform, a company called Atlas Digital, one nobody had ever heard of. I asked, "Who did the security vetting on this platform?" Monica replied directly, "We were advised by an independent consultant, and you don't need to worry about it anymore, Walter. Let Ryan lead this transition phase." I nodded, but I didn't retreat. I began saving everything: emails, altered configurations, access changes, login times. Not because I was planning to blow the whistle, but because I could feel the wind shifting, and my professional instincts told me, prepare before the storm hits. The tipping point came last month. Ryan sent a Slack message to the whole team. "We'll be updating the network diagram to align with the new DevOps model. The draft will replace Walter's current system. No proposal, no seeking input, not even a thank you." I opened the draft. It was flimsy. A fantasy diagram straight from a college textbook. No latency mapping, no loop fail-safes, no layered backups. A plan that, if implemented as is, would crash Crestview's entire internal network. I didn't reply, but that very night I backed up all my original system architecture files to 3 separate external drives, stored them in 3 different locations. I also deployed a ghost monitoring script on the test server, completely invisible to others. It logged who changed what, when, and from where. You see, they didn't fire me with a slap. They starved me out inch by inch. They bled me out of the company's operational bloodstream, the same company I'd poured nearly 2 decades into. They forgot one thing. Old guys like me might take a step back, but when we step forward again, we're damn steady. They thought I saw nothing. The truth is, I saw everything. I just hadn't said anything. Yet. There's one thing younger people often don't understand: the sneaky tricks they try to pull behind the back of an old IT guy. He probably invented those back in the dial-up days. After 3 weeks of being quietly pushed out of nearly every process, I went back to doing something no one in the tech team had bothered with in ages: checking logs from the old system. Specifically, the internal ERP platform, an aging hybrid system I used to manually maintain every month, since no one else cared to learn its XML structure. I opened the access logs from 2 months prior, right around the time Monica announced the full transition of our payment processing to the new modern platform developed by Atlas Digital. I noticed something strange. Every Friday at exactly 6:15 p.m., there was an external API call to the invoice endpoint. This connection bypassed our secure proxy and accessed an internal route, one that only I knew existed, from custom coding I did back in 2015. I dug deeper into the IP records. The source address, 45.76101.210, registered under a commercial IP block in Indiana. I traced it further. The server was pinging from a rundown warehouse near the Northern Industrial District of Indianapolis, a location never once mentioned in any company document. I paused, opened my browser, typed Atlas Digital Solutions LLC plus address. Google Maps pulled up an image, an abandoned laundromat. My heartbeat ticked up slightly, not from surprise, but from the familiar rush of tracing a trail you know is real. I checked the business registration in Indiana. Atlas Digital had been registered for less than a year. No website, no listed employees. Legal representative, Charles Avery. Avery isn't a common last name. I checked Monica's LinkedIn profile, CFO of Crestview. Former spouse, Charles Avery. Divorced in 2019. Still kept the last name. I looked into the invoices issued by Atlas Digital. On the surface, all perfectly legit. Invoice codes matched the company's internal systems. Digital signatures were in order. But the amounts? Increasing steadily month by month. From $18,000 to $36,000, then $52,000, all within 3 months. Description: invoice automation and system deployment consulting. I knew full well no automation was implemented. The system was still being operated manually by the internal team. They just slapped on a fresh interface to make it look new. I opened my personal laptop, created a new folder. I called it "Don't Lie to the Guy Who Wrote the Original Code." Then I began downloading copies of the unauthorized access logs, transaction history from the system, approval emails with Monica's digital signature, the internal financial approval process documents. I wrote them myself. I organized them all by date, and like a flowchart, the fraud began to take shape. Monica slashed the internal IT budget, citing strategic shift. Ryan was brought in and granted unusually high access. Atlas Digital signed internal contracts without full approval. The system handoff to Atlas was really just a shell move, a money funnel to a phantom company. I knew I couldn't act hastily. In a place like this, even telling the truth can be seen as a threat. I reached out to an old contact, Sam Parker, a former internal auditor now working elsewhere. I only said one thing. Sam, if you saw a company paying monthly to a shell corporation set up by the CFO's ex-husband, but no actual services being delivered, would that be a problem? He chuckled softly. Not a problem, Walter. That's called criminal. That night, I sat in the dark of my living room. Outside, late autumn leaves drifted down onto the walkway. My daughter texted, "You okay, Dad?" I replied, "Still Dad. Careful as always." I remembered what my wife once told me before she passed. You're like a silent coder, never loud, but when you speak, people can't ignore you. I didn't file a complaint. I didn't draft a formal letter. I started planning, not for revenge, but to protect the truth. The day I was escorted out of that boardroom by Monica's cold words, she thought she was clearing out a worn-out piece of the past. But she didn't know. The only person who knows where the bodies are buried is the one who built the foundation. Wednesday, 8:57 a.m. I sat in my car, just 1 block away from Crestview Logistics headquarters. The coffee in my hand was still hot. On the passenger seat, my old laptop, running Ubuntu 16.04, had the mail client open, connected through a secure VPN. Everything had been prepped the night before. I checked the inbox of internal.audit@crestview.labs.com. A new message. Subject, request to identify sender. From Gerald Lane, head of internal audit. I didn't respond. Instead, I hit send on a scheduled email. Recipients, the entire board of directors, the CEO, the head of audit, the legal team, and Monica Avery. Subject, urgent special report, financial transactions related to Atlas Digital. Attachment, a 32-page report plus complete logs plus system access maps. 8:59 a.m. I closed the laptop, looked out the window. Employees were arriving one by one. Some faces I still remembered, but now I was just an outsider, or more accurately, an outsider, who knew everything inside. 9 a.m. Board meeting begins. 9:21, first to react. The first message came through on my phone. It was from Sam Parker, the former auditor. "Walter, what did you just do? They're in full panic." 9:27, another email from Gerald Lane. "We need to speak to the sender of this report. This is a serious matter." 9:34, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't pick up. 9:38, Monica's number flashed. Still didn't pick up. 9:42, email from Monica. "Walter, if this is some kind of prank, you're putting yourself in legal jeopardy. Call me now." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a copy of the report and sent it to Robert Kelly, an investigative journalist I once helped recover emails for during a lawsuit a decade ago. I wrote nothing except the subject line, "If the board doesn't act, the public will." 9:58. The system begins to shake. Sam texted again. "Meeting interrupted." Monica stormed out. "CEO Kinley looks like he's been punched in the face." 10:15, one of the board members, Dr. Lawrence Chen, called me. This time I answered. "Walter, it's Lawrence. I know it was you who sent the report. I want you to know, I'm reading every page." His voice wasn't angry. It was low, steady, and taut like a drawn string. "We will investigate thoroughly. And if what you submitted holds up, you just saved this company from a blow no one saw coming." I replied with one sentence. "I didn't save them. I just didn't want the place I gave 17 years to be sold off by people who never understood the value of a single log file." 11:02, they start to crack. Sam called again. "They've just suspended Monica pending investigation." Ryan got into a shouting match with Kinley in the hallway, saying I was just following orders. Kinley slammed the table. "They're bringing in external legal counsel." Walter, you really did it. I gave a small smile. No pride, no gloating, just satisfaction. 11:34. The final twist from the guilty. Another email from Monica. This one, different. Walter, I know we've lost trust, but you don't want to destroy your own reputation over a misunderstanding? Let's meet. We can resolve this quietly. I can even help you return, maybe at a higher position. Please don't take this too far. Her final offer. I didn't reply. I just forwarded the email to Lawrence Chen, board member. 12:07. Internal announcement released a company-wide email from CEO David Kinley. Due to suspected financial misconduct and serious breaches of approval procedures, Ms. Monica Avery, Chief Financial Officer, has been suspended pending investigation. An independent audit team will be appointed. All transactions involving Atlas Digital are frozen effective immediately. I read the email, then set the phone down. I stepped out of the car and walked to a familiar coffee shop 2 blocks away. An old staff member smiled at me. Morning, Mr. Walter. Day off today? I nodded. A real one, this time. I sat in the corner, watching people pass by on the sidewalk and thought, I never shouted, never called anyone out in public. I just gave the truth a chance to speak, at the right time. Turns out, that was enough. Friday, 7:23 a.m. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number showed on the screen, but I already knew who it was before I picked up. Mr. Harris, this is David Kinley. I think it's time we talk. His voice was tired but no longer defensive. There was something in it, the sound of a man who knew he had nearly lost something irreplaceable. I don't know how to thank you enough. We were so focused on moving forward, we didn't realize we were breaking the very things that were keeping everything running. I stayed silent. I want to invite you back, not in your old role. We need you to help rebuild trust from the inside. 3 days later, I sat in a different meeting room, not the cold room where I'd once been dismissed, but the top floor boardroom. I hadn't stepped foot there once in 17 years. Lawrence Chen, board member, spoke first. Walter, we've discussed it, and we agree. The company needs a new position. Someone outside the executive chain of command. Someone unaffected by budgets or politics. Someone with full oversight of systems, transactions, and people. Someone who understands the architecture down to the code. Someone old enough not to chase power and wise enough not to compromise with what's wrong. He paused. You are that person. Title: Chief Integrity Officer. Direct report to the board, not the CEO. Full system access. Oversight of all transactions. Authority to approve or reject technologies. Separate budget. Own team. They handed me the offer. Hard to refuse. But I turned to the last page, where I had attached a small private addendum. I'd already sent it to Lawrence by email. My non-negotiable conditions. 3 non-negotiable terms. Veto power over any contract related to data systems or infrastructure. No approvals needed, only notification. No individual directly tied to the fraud, regardless of prosecution outcome, may return to any role involving tech or finance. I have the right to conduct unannounced audits at any time. Not even the CEO is to be notified in advance. Kinley read through it, his face tensed slightly at the third condition. Unannounced. Even to me? I looked him in the eye. If you still want trust, you'll have to get used to transparency. Lawrence nodded slowly. I support it. We need to rebuild from the foundation, not repaint the facade. 15 minutes of silence passed. Then Kinley signed. That afternoon, I stepped into my new office, 7th floor overlooking R65. On the desk, a computer already running the system dashboard. Real-time access graphs pulsing like the heartbeat of a living organism. I stood there, not sitting down right away, just watching. I once thought I'd never return, and yet here I was. Not because I needed the job, but because the system needed someone who understood it. Reconnecting with old faces. The first person to enter my office was Ethan, a young engineer once ignored by Ryan for being too inexperienced. Mr. Harris, I just wanted to say thank you. We know you sent the report. Everyone knows. Thank you for not letting this get buried. I looked at him, saw myself in 1992, nervously stepping into a senior's office, hoping to be shown the way. I pulled out a chair. Sit down. You'll help me review every single access permission protocol. We're rebuilding it, from scratch. Ethan's eyes lit up like a kid finally handed a real tool. In the following days, I began rewriting the system map of Crestview, not just technically, but humanly. Who truly understands the work, who uses tech as a mask for incompetence, who deserves a real shot. I wasn't here to punish. I was here to reset the foundation. Monica, the final aftershock. Monica Avery wasn't prosecuted, lack of evidence proving personal gain, but she was permanently barred from working with any system involving financial or tech approvals. I wasn't glad, I wasn't bitter. I just took away one lesson. Intelligence may create systems, but only integrity keeps them from collapsing. One late afternoon, I paused inside the data center. The server room was silent, save for the steady hum of cooling fans. I laid my hand on the oldest rack, the one I assembled by hand back in 2008. I whispered, "We're still running, thanks to the things no one sees." A few days later, I received an internal email from Lawrence. "Walter, the board just approved increased funding for system oversight, all thanks to your plan. Thank you for coming back, not for revenge, but to repair." I stared at the message, typed one simple line in reply: "No system is without cracks, but if you know how to listen, you'll fix it before it breaks." 6 months later. Winter had arrived. The streets of Indianapolis were covered in shades of white and gray. I sat in my office, now as familiar as my own living room, staring out the window at the I-65 freeway, locked in morning rush hour. The system dashboard still blinked steadily on the monitor to my left. No red alerts, no anomalies. I closed the laptop, moved my coffee mug aside, and for the first time in many years, I just sat there, doing nothing at all. A letter never sent that evening. I opened an old drawer at home. Inside was the leather briefcase my wife gave me back in 2004 when I was promoted to system lead. Tucked inside were a stack of old papers, some technical notes, and a letter I had never sent. A letter I wrote to myself in 2010 after the system crashed on Christmas Day. "Walter, don't expect people to remember what you saved. They'll only remember the system ran smoothly, but don't let that make you forget why you stayed. Not for money, not for title, but because you knew, without you, it wouldn't run at all." I read it again, folded it neatly, placed it back, and smiled. Still true. Lessons not written on the wall. Last week, I held a small training session for the new hires, all 20-somethings. There were no buzzwords like DevOps, microservices, or cloud native on the slides. I only wrote 3 lines. No one knows you're keeping the system upright until it crashes. You don't need to be the loudest, just the most dependable. Always keep a backup, for the system and for yourself. After the session, a shy young man approached me. "Mr. Harris, I never thought a log file could save a whole company." I looked at him and gently patted his shoulder. The log didn't save anyone. Only the person who didn't ignore it saved what mattered. Not satisfaction, completion. People often ask me, "Are you happy to be back?" And my answer is simple: no. I didn't come back to be happy. I came back to finish something I still owed. I owed this system a proper conclusion. I owed the younger staff a role model, not flawless, but firm. I owed myself one time, just once, where I didn't stay silent when I knew the truth. An unsensational ending. I didn't go to the press, didn't give interviews. No LinkedIn post went viral titled, "How I Exposed Corporate Fraud from Within." I wrote one sentence on my profile, 6 months after I returned. "Experience doesn't fall out of gray hair. It falls from the times you stayed behind to fix what others walked away from." Not many people shared it, but a few old colleagues left comments. "Thanks for not leaving when we needed you most." The next generation needs to know one thing. I don't think the younger generation is bad. They're smarter than we ever were at 25. But they lack one thing: faith and perseverance. They want change fast. but they don't understand. To change something built over time, you have to understand it first. To change a system, ask the one who kept it alive through storms. To change an organization, ask the one who knows what's foundational and what's just decoration. And the final lesson. I was once replaced like outdated hardware, but it turns out what they thought was obsolete was actually the original architect. And the greatest lesson I could leave for anyone reading this far isn't about cybersecurity or access controls. It's about the strength of silence. Don't shout to be heard by the world. Build things solid enough that the world can't ignore you. The end. The system is still running. The logs are still writing, and I'm still here, not as some grumpy old man, but as the final gatekeeper for what's still worth guarding.